been wanting to address the most recent spate of transphobic news, but where do I even start? It's been an entire year since I last discussed the pseudoscience behind anti-trans legislation efforts that presumably wants to protect the children from receiving science-based medical care. And in that year, there have been so many more bills trying to criminalize the act of being transgender and receiving care. Texas, who I discussed specifically in that last video, has continued to just go completely off the rails with politicians introducing so many different bills to outlaw procedures that don't happen based on things they think they saw on social media. And no, I'm completely serious. Texas State Representative Brian Harrison says he felt shocked into action when he came to believe that young children were undergoing significant irreversible surgeries, including phalloplasty and vulvoplasty, which are sometimes referred to as bottom surgery. Harrison says he's seen photos online that purport to show children who have undergone these procedures. When I saw them circulating on social media, and honestly, it's hard to avoid them at this point, of these young, beautiful children post-surgery, those photos look like something out of a horror movie. They're heartbreaking. Okay, yeah, first of all, I am terminally online, and I can tell you that it is actually very, very easy to avoid seeing photos of prepubescent children's genitals. Like, has anyone in Texas law enforcement thought to take a little peek at Brian Harrison's browser history? Because something is not right there. Second of all, as that piece continues, there's one problem with Harrison's story. The photos do not evidence something happening to young children in Texas. Across the United States, medical guidelines already prevent gender affirmation surgery for any prepubescent patient. If you want more info on that, please just go check out my previous video where I talk all about what gender-affirming care actually looks like for kids in the United States. Along with the growing number of states introducing legislation to prevent kids and sometimes even adults from accessing gender-affirming care, we have politicians citing outlets like the New York Times for their friendly coverage of transphobes. This was explicitly called out in a letter signed by more than 1,000 New York Times contributors who wrote in part, "The natural destination of poor editorial judgment is the court of law. Last year, Arkansas's Attorney General filed an amicus brief in defense of Alabama's Vulnerable Child Compassion and Protection Act, which would make it a felony punishable by up to 10 years imprisonment for any medical provider to administer certain gender-affirming medical care to a minor, including puberty blockers, that diverges from their sex assigned at birth." The brief cited 3 different New York Times articles to justify its support of the law. As recently as February 8, 2023, Attorney David Begley's invited testimony to the Nebraska state legislature in support of a similar bill approvingly cited the Times reporting and relied on its reputation as the paper of record to justify criminalizing gender-affirming care. The whole letter is good. I encourage you to read it. And I agree that many articles in the New York Times have suffered from both sidesism at best, presenting conservative theocrats who literally want to destroy public schooling in the name of parental rights as concerned parents who are upset that somewhere there's a teenager asking his friends to use different pronouns at school. They let them spread this misinformation, and they rope in a larger, more mainstream audience of also concerned parents. I especially enjoyed this article about the parents' rights to know whether their teen has socially transitioned at school, where the reporter visits an anonymous safe space where the parents can freely share their opinions about all of this stuff without judgment. Wow, I'm just so glad that they have a safe space amongst accepting peers where they can truly be themselves without judgment. It's a good thing nobody needs that until they reach the age of 18 or 26, whatever. Anyway, that safe space anecdote was immediately followed with this photo and the caption, "A family in Florida said they weren't notified that their child was being counseled about gender confusion at school. The child now has an emotional support rabbit." Dear Lord, that truly is the worst case scenario result of a kid talking to a school counselor about their feelings. An emotional support rabbit. Can you believe that? RIP to all your power cables, you poor suckers. As bad as all the examples in that letter were, the response to that letter was truly next level. First, the New York Times itself responded by running a vigorous defense of J.K. Rowling, the transphobic nightmare woman who came up with Harry Potter, which honestly I do find very funny. Like, J.K. Rowling is a billionaire. No one ever needs to defend her. She could literally just close Twitter and never open it again and spend the rest of her days lounging on a yacht somewhere if she truly feels attacked. And certainly the New York Times doesn't need to defend her in an editorial the day after they get a letter from 1,000 contributors asking them to please provide more scientifically accurate coverage of trans issues. So yeah, the New York Times stands behind their reporting, but even nuttier than the J.K. Rowling thing was the response from Jonathan Chait, a writer for New York Magazine, which I thought this was satire at first because I saw a screenshot and I was sure that no one would write this with a straight face, but he did. As proof that doctors specializing in gender-affirming care have gone too far, he cites a whistleblower named Jamie Reed, who says that she worked as a case manager at the Washington University Transgender Center at St. Louis Children's Hospital. According to Reed, children coming to the clinic were given little or no psychiatric evaluation, even when they presented with serious mental illnesses or obvious false diagnoses. Instead, they were pushed overwhelmingly, almost automatically, into gender reassignment. Reed says children come into the clinic using pronouns of inanimate objects like mushroom, rock, or helicopter, and were given puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones. I'll be honest, prior to reading this piece, I had no opinion on Jonathan Chait, none at all. But after reading that insanely credulous quote, I now believe that I could call Jonathan Chait right now on the phone and convince him that I'm from the IRS and his last 1040 was incorrect, and I'm going to arrest him for failure to pay if he doesn't immediately go to Best Buy and buy 15 PlayStation gift cards and read me the serial numbers over the phone. I'm pretty sure I could tell him that I'm going to buy his car off Facebook Marketplace for $1,000 over asking price, but first I'll need him to wire $200 to the guy who's going to pick it up for me. Like, I could pretend to be a Belarusian model for several months, building a romantic relationship with Chait before subtly suggesting that I was having trouble paying my rent and only giving up the ruse when after 2 years of correspondence, he shows up in Minsk with a camera crew from 90 Day Fiancé. I'm pretty sure I could do any of those things. If you don't know, I identify as an attack helicopter is a 4chan joke that is so old it could legally pursue gender-affirming care in Texas. So, that's one reason why we know that this obviously did not happen. But the other reason we know is because we can just imagine how this would play out. Like, hello, doctor, I'm a 12-year-old who was assigned female at birth, but now I identify as a helicopter. Hormones, please. And, now I'm the doctor. Oh, okay, here are the special helicopter hormones. By which I mean an oil change, I guess, because there are no cross-sex hormones to turn you into a helicopter or a mushroom. Jesus Christ, Jonathan Chait. I can't believe he read this, believed it, and then published it in New York Magazine, presumably after other sane adults saw it and nodded and agreed that, yep, that happened. Incredible. Just incredible. Look, I have seen teens acting out on TikTok, obviously pretending to have all kinds of disorders that they probably don't have. Because that's what teenagers do. Teenagers try on different things. They're usually really cringy and annoying about it. And sometimes they drop them and sometimes they use that to figure out who they really are. So sure, I can believe that somewhere out there's a cringy kid telling their friends their pronouns are smile and kitten. And sure, I could believe that maybe one of those kids managed to make it all the way to a doctor's office. But unlike New York Magazine writers, most most doctors are not credulous morons. And absolutely no doctor would do anything for a kid like that besides recommend intensive therapy for their unbearable need for attention. And not that it needs to be said, but practices very similar to those have not, in fact, already been proven in the United Kingdom. No, there is no evidence that a child has received hormones for identifying as a helicopter. My God. I am begging people to just take a deep breath and use your bullshit detector, especially if you're writing for a major publication read by literally millions of people. Transphobes and parental rights theocrats are not trying to overrule 12-year-olds in drama club who think that they can be a penguin when they grow up. They're trying to overrule doctors who specialize in the health and well-being of people who are experiencing gender dysphoria. And they've decided that the best way to treat that is early and with several different interventions, including therapy and sometimes hormone blockers, and then eventually sometimes surgery. And you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and trust the doctors. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.